Hi, this is Miss Goodale again, and I'm here to talk about how to change a fraction to a decimal. Um, I'm going to start out with just plain fractions, and then I'm going to show you mixed numbers. It's the same process, just one added step with the mixed numbers. So let's start with 5/8. So if I start with my fraction, all I really have to do is turn that on its side. So your 8 is going to be on the outside of division, and your 5 is going to be on the inside. So if you flip it on the side, the 5 is going to be divided by the 8. You divide the top number by the bottom number. Now we're making it into a decimal, so obviously we're going to have a decimal point, and we just add a 0. And remember, you can add as many zeros as you need to after your decimal to work out your problem. Now, obviously, 8 does not go into 5, but 8 will go into 50. So 8 goes into 50 6 times. So 8 times 6 is 48. And then I just subtract 50 minus 48 is 2. And then I'm going to put another number here, okay? Rather than have remainder 2, when I do fraction or decimals, I do not have a remainder. I continue adding zeros. Sometimes I may need to end that, but we are not going to put a remainder when we have a decimal in division. So I put a 0 and I bring it down. 8 can go into 20 twice. 8 times 2 is 16. And then I subtract. 20 minus 16 is 4. Again, I don't have, it didn't end up evenly yet. I'm going to go ahead and add another 0. I can bring down my 0. And 8 does go into 40, and it goes into 45 times. So 8 times 5 is 40, and I subtract, and I get 0. So that one came out evenly. So 5/8 is equal to 625 thousandths, or 0.625. In this case, it actually did end it up evenly pretty quickly. Let me show you an example of one with a repeating decimal. So if I divided 2/3, again, I would put my 2 on the inside. That's the top number. My bottom number goes on the outside. Obviously, 3 does not go into 2. We're going to end up with a decimal. I put a 0. 3 does go into 20 6 times. 3 times 6 is 18. 20, take away 18 is 2. Put a 0. Bring it down. I'm left with 20 again. Same thing. And I can see a pattern is going to develop. It's always going to end up being a 2 repeated. Subtract, get 2. So I know that since this is repeated, it's going to keep going on forever, so I'm not going to keep going. Most of the problems that we work on in class are not going to have the repeating decimals, but eventually you will get to some that are like that. Notice I put that 0 here. When you have a decimal, you always have a 0 before the decimal or another number. You're not going to put a decimal point and then a 6/6 and not put a 0 in front of it, okay? Let's do another example. And this one is one that you may know off the top of your head, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. So 1/2, we put our 1 on the inside, we have our 2 on the outside, put our 0, does not go into, 2 does not go into 1, but 2 will go into 10 5 times. 2 times 5 is 10. Subtract and you get 0, and it goes in evenly. So 1/2 is equal to 0.5 or 5/10. So these are pretty simple. Notice that when I do these, I have a number above each of my zeros that I added. Okay, even if it did not go into there, there should be a number above it. Okay, there should be a 0 if I brought something down and it didn't go into it. If I had to add another 0 to make it go into something, there should be another 0 there. Okay, now let's get into an example of one with a whole number and a decimal or a fraction. So let's do a whole number, 1 3/8. So when we have a whole number, it doesn't matter if it's 1, 11, 21, 99, 100, whatever the whole number is going to stay a whole number. So your answer is going to be that number with a decimal behind it. And usually I try to just leave the whole number out when I am doing the problem and then put the decimal part in after I divide, so I don't have to worry about it when I'm doing the division. So I'm going to go ahead and put my 3 here. Remember, my top number goes on the inside. My 8 goes on the outside. 8 does not go into 3, so I'm going to put a 0. My decimal goes straight up, and then I put a 0. It does go into 30. So it goes into 30 3 times. 8 times 3 is 24. And then I subtract. 30 minus 24 is 6. We need to add a 0 to get it to keep going. So I add a 0, bring it down. 8 goes into 60 7 times. 8 times 7 is 56. I subtract. 60, take away 56 is 4. Add a 0, bring down my 0. And then 8 will go into 40 evenly, which is 5. 8 times 5 is 40. I subtract, I get 0, so I'm done. Now I have this 375, but don't forget that I had this 1 here. So I have to put my 375 on the back of my whole number that I started out with. Okay, so this is a lot simpler to change from a fraction to a decimal because all you have to do is divide your fraction. Okay, and then the big thing that I see people forget is to add their whole number. So don't forget your whole number stays there, and then the number that you end up with after the decimal is going to go at the end. Okay? Try that out. Let me know if you have any more questions, and feel free to ask.